Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePoci, your host. It is the 20th of December, 2023, the day before the winter solstice, and we couldn't have a better guest to join us this week in our weekly recap. Olga Morales from Australia is joining us. Olga, welcome. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. I'm really well. It's actually the 21st here. I'm always ahead of
Yes.
time. I'm a time traveler. I already know what's happening on the day after. Yeah. So it's the 21st here, but yeah. So thank you for inviting me. I love talking about financial astrology, obviously, and WD Gann any chance I can. So thank you.
Well, you are one of the best known Gann teachers in the world, so we're really excited to have you. And let's start off by talking about the importance of the solstice points when it comes to Gann. And this is something we discussed prior to setting up this meeting. So we saw a pretty big reversal in the Dow Jones today. So is this another Gann moment that we are in the precipice of?
Yeah, well, he talks about that. He calls them the natural seasonal changes because it's a natural cycle of the sun. And he always says, look at those ingresses. So we astrologers call them ingresses. I mean, ingresses were used by astrologers anciently in terms of mundane forecasting. It's supposed to represent the quarter ahead. So they would make an analysis of that, right? And those points are all to do with the tropics. So the tropics and the equinoxes. So you can understand why it's important. And he also had mid-season, so every 45 degrees, which is in the fixed signs. So yeah, when you're learning Gann, when you start out, it's one of the easiest things really is to look at the seasonal dates. And if you look back,
Yeah.
how often there's a change in trend at those times, you really can't make it up. And markets do follow nature. That he calls it natural law.
Natural law,
So
that's right.
yeah.
And I added an addendum to that the law of nature is cycles. I guess that's the modern way of saying it, right?
Yeah.
But this solstice is especially peculiar because we have Venus set to oppose Uranus on the same day, and one of the things that we often look at with Uranus is the potential for breakouts of support or resistance. But right now, Mercury being retrograde, the probability of false breakouts or false moves occurring are higher. So I think that's a big thing that we're looking at in stock markets around the world right now because we've rallied so much so quickly over
Yeah.
the last several weeks. And now coming into the solstice point, it does look like a high of significance is complete. But in your opinion, Olga, is this the high, or does this bull market still have some gas left in the tank?
No, it's not over yet, according to Gann analysis. According to Gann, he talks about the fifth year. He was very much into numerology and the cycles, that every 10 years, every 20 years, and so forth. And he always said that the fifth year, a year ended in five, is the year of ascension. Okay. Now, there is a cycle behind that, which I do teach in my courses and my workshops. So, in terms of Gann, I think the top will be the middle of 2025 of this bull market.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. According to his analysis that I'm doing. So we've still got way to go. Next year, I think, is very bullish overall. There's a lot of really nice aspects happening. Some of the eclipses, usually when eclipses happen, we have a couple of days or maybe a week or two of a reversal, but then it just picks up again. Overall, what I see next year is that there's probably going to be, if I'm correct, um, a highish area in January, like a bit bullish, and then we get two double bottoms, May and around August, and then up into November. It's all to do with the fixed signs next year, the fixed
Yeah.
times of the year. That's what my analysis shows. So it'll be interesting. But in terms of it continuing, definitely we're not out. I can't see. I know some people are saying, 2024 is going to be a crash. They've been saying that for a while, but it's not
Yeah.
crashing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my take anyway.
Well, it's interesting. So you said May and August, right? Those are the
Yep.
GAN times for next year. Well, the month before May, we obviously have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, which is a fixed sign theme there too. And Jupiter and Uranus, my first thought is bull market, right? Explosion to new highs, but also with the potential for um, high levels of optimism that can correspond to a high of significance forming. Now, when we look at August, that actually starts the first of three square passages between Jupiter and Saturn. So we call that a central time band. So we have the first square signature in August, then one in December, and then one in June of 2025. So, we've kind of seen the central banks start to pivot, at least, verbally when it comes to monetary policy going into next year. The market is expecting rate cuts. So, I've been kind of the persuasion that is a bit concerning because, why would they be wanting to cut if the economy is not slowing down? But that doesn't mean the market can continue higher in the near term. So, does Gann ever talk about outer planetary aspects, or is this work more centered around the
Well,
sun going through the zodiac?
the Jupiter-Saturn cycle was one of his main forecasting cycles. He called it the 20-year master forecasting cycle. I do a lot of work on that. I teach it a lot too. And it, like he had I haven't got it in front of me, but he had a Dow Jones chart that what we would call a composite now,
Mhm.
and he would take 20 years slice of the data, and then another 20 years and another 20 years and so forth. And he would start it from the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Okay, because we know they're conjunct every 20 years, and then he would draw the Dow Jones, and that would give him an overall trend for the aspects. That's what he was looking for the aspects. So yeah, the first square is actually, according to the work, is very bullish. So that's why I can see that we're still going up next year.
Yeah, that's very interesting. One of the other peculiar observations of this square between Jupiter and Saturn is that the first two are in mutable signs, but then the third one will be in cardinal. So, the first two you have Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini, but then you're going to have Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. So, do the sign placements have any bearing on Gann's methodology?
Well, Saturn cycle, actually, Saturn likes being in Pisces when I do the statistical analysis for the Dow Jones. So, I'm just thinking, and then Jupiter going into Gemini next year, around May. We were talking before we got on camera that W.D. Gann was using the Gemini rising chart for the United States. Okay.
Yeah.
And I worked that out. I worked out the time. It's in my book. I'll show you the chart. This is what it is.
I think there you go. Say we lost you, but
Yeah, it's
Mercury retrograde.
this is one of the first things I got from him. It's probably a bit blurry, but anyway, it's hand drawn. He's got 4 charts on this. Okay, so he's got Columbus, America, 1492.
Yeah.
Then he's got the American independence, and then he's got 2 Chicago Board of Trade charts, right? And then on the outside, he's just got the conjunctions and the oppositions of all the outer planets, okay? Giving him an idea where they are in terms of the zodiac and how it's going to have an impact on these 4 charts, right?
Yeah.
So when I got this, I was looking and I found the position of the moon. And I did a bit of a rectification. So I know that he was definitely using Gemini rising for this chart, and that's what he was using. And he even says it in Tunnel Through the Air. Tunnel Through the Air, he talks about astrologers use the sign of Gemini. That's why another reason why he made Robert Gordon a Gemini is to do with this whole Gemini energy, and plus Gann was a Gemini. Have you ever looked at Louise McWhirter's work, Johnny?
I'm familiar with it, and I want to ask you, Olga, is Louise McWhirter an alias for W.D. Gann?
No,
Okay,
that's
that's
been
what I
made
thought.
up.
There are like theories about that, but I never believed it.
No, some person made that up. They've
Yeah,
actually she had offices next to him, so they made the assumption that it was the same person.
yeah.
But she's a real person. I I can't remember the lady's name. She's on Twitter, and I'm having a mental block at the moment. But she's done a bit of a talk. Karen Christino. She's written about her. So no, she was a real person. She may have worked for Gann. I don't
Yeah.
know, but she's not Gann. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean he's not her.
I know that her work was more centered around the nodes moving through the zodiac.
Yeah, but she also talks about. She also talks about. She uses Gemini as well, Gemini rising, because she talks about there are secondary factors which increase business cycle and negative ones,
Mhm.
and one of them is when Jupiter moves into Gemini,
Yeah.
right? Which we know is happening. So there's a lot of things that are positive as well in terms of secondary things that are happening. So that's what my analysis is based on. I'm using, and plus also the nodal cycle. Okay. Um, yeah, so that's why the whole Gemini thing's important. I get a lot of flack from other astrologers. That doesn't work. Why would you have a chart that's timed for 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Because it's like an electional chart. You know, it's an electional chart because the planet of revolution, even though it hadn't been discovered yet, it was rising at that time in Gemini,
Yeah.
right? So it's all to do with that, and so they, they were all. I mean, also again was a Mason. Okay, so they were very
Yeah.
much into timing everything perfectly. And another great astrologer who used Gemini rising was Evangelina Adams. All
Yeah.
right, she was J.P. Morgan's astrologer. So at that time, maybe it was just a trend in the early 1900s that everyone used Gemini rising for the United States. And so I still use it because it's significant for my analysis anyway.
Well, I know you also do some work with astrocartography, and
Yeah,
does Gemini not that rules New York City too, doesn't it?
yep,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
and that's obviously where the New York Stock Exchange is, so that's,
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
pretty important in terms of the US, being the global financial hub of the world.
I
So,
mean, have you read Tunnel Through the Air?
oh yeah, yeah, a couple times. Well, actually,
Well,
I read it one time, and then I felt like I understood it pretty well. And I was teasing you before we started recording, Olga, because when I first met you at UAC in 2018, and my birthday is June 10th, and on the first page of the book, Robert Gordon was born on the 9th, and it says that his
well,
mother.
that means you have to work this out because,
Yeah.
like, you'll find something about yourself in this
Yeah,
book,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very
um,
good.
this was what got me hooked in. So I was an astrologer way before I had heard about Gann. Okay, I got my degrees when I was in my early 20s. I was young, right? And then these group of traders came to me in 2015 and said, Olga, we want to learn astrology because we want to decode this book. And I said, what? What's the book about? And so that's how I learnt about him. And that's 20 years ago almost, right?
Yeah.
19 years, we'll say, it's a Metonic cycle. And so the first thing I did when I got this book, I actually got the PDF version because every time he tells you he buys and sells something, he wants you to cast a chart.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes he even gives you the time. I mean,
Mhm.
that's so specific. And I've got a huge file of all my charts and so forth, but I can't say I've decoded the whole thing. And there's different ways of seeing the clues in here. I mean, if you're into numerology, you might pick it up a different way because he puts clues
Right.
even on the page numbers. So that's why I say, people, if you want to go down this big rabbit hole,
Yeah,
you
that's what
need
it
this
is.
original one from the Lamb people, because if you get some copy on the internet, all the pages are not
Right.
numbered properly, and you'll get clues on pages like page 56 is one of my favorites. It's probably the easiest one to teach. He talks about the two great eclipses, and he talks about the wheel of Ezekiel in the Bible,
Yeah.
right? And we know that in terms of planet eclipse cycles, there's 3 cycles of the 56, and he goes into that. And then my copy, the other thing is a copy of my book is number 56 as well.
Oh, how
um,
about that? Mhm.
so like there's numbers, and like if you go to 90. Page 90, he says something about 90 degrees.
Yeah.
180, he'll say something about it. When Gann had a price for a low or high, he would always add degrees to it, usually 180 degrees. Okay, that would give him another price, adding the at 180 to it, and then he would put that on his chart in time and price. So like there's so much. I was just blown away. I wasn't sleeping when I started. I always say I'm a forensic astrologer because I'm a Scorpio Virgo rising.
Okay.
Like if I have to solve something, I'm going to solve it. I wasn't
Of
going to
course.
bed. Like I was up, and plus, the obsessive side of Scorpio, I had to work out the mysteries of the universe, which I still want to do. Obviously, I've covered a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that I haven't, and like
Yeah.
it's an ongoing, and it depends how much you want to do, really. So with that, like that desire to solve all these things and see the patterns for myself, that's when then people started finding out about me, and I started teaching online through my courses. So because those traders were coming into my house, I was just teaching them in my lounge room at that
Yeah.
stage. um, and so, yeah, because I believe I'm not the only financial astrologer, obviously, but I believe I'm the only astrologer that focuses purely on Gann's work.
You are
So,
one of the few, that's for sure. I do
yeah.
want to ask you, Olga, what does Bitcoin hold per the Gann methods going into next year?
Um, with Bitcoin, I think I've been doing my own little I've got my I've got a harmonic indicator that I've created. I create that according to midpoints because people know me as a midpoint queen, which I love that title. So part of my training, when I started astrology over 30 years ago, my teacher was also a cosmobiologist. So we use midpoints and we use a 90-degree dial. It's really fine tuning, and so I use that to analyze Bitcoin because everyone wants me to obviously know about Bitcoin. I don't care what I study and what I look at. I just love doing it, right?
Yeah.
Actually, Bitcoin, I find Bitcoin easy to analyze. It's not a difficult chart. So I do use the natal chart. Um, according to, I believe next year is still going to be good for Bitcoin. And I'm just looking at my chart here. I think January will probably be a high period. I've got May, June, probably highs as well, and also October.
Okay.
So that's just something I'm looking at in terms of transits to midpoints.
Very good. Well, thank you for that, Olga. We are going to wrap this up now. Before we do, can you share with our viewers where they can find you and your work?
Oh, okay. That was quick, wasn't it? I could talk for hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people know where to find me, but my name's Olga Morales, and it's astrologyforgantraders.com.au, and on Twitter or X, I'm AstroGan33. So yeah, look me up. I'm always posting. I put things up every day. I love
That's
doing it.
great.
I've been always one to share as much as I can to inspire people, and obviously Gann's a big part of my life. I know he's above me always, and yeah. So thank you for having me on today, and it's a really auspicious time just before the solstice for him
I
to
know
be.
I worked out very well, and we're very
Yeah.
glad that you were able to join us. I do have a couple of announcements for our viewers. Just got our copy of Forecast 2024. Definitely want to check that out. We lay out our forecasts for various markets and other mundane matters going into 2024. The monthly ETF report was just released today. You can find that and all of our other reports at www.mmacycles.com. So Olga, any final words? Just I guess be cautious in stocks in the immediate term, but don't get scared out of your long position because we're probably going higher, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what my work shows. We can always be wrong. I always say that disclaimer.
yeah.
But to me, astrologically, I'm looking from an astrological point of view. To me, it looks good.
Okay. All right, Olga. Well, thanks again, and we will definitely have you back on in the future.